Mireille Malt. Mireille Malt is an associate researcher in the musical representations team at IRCAM, the computer music designer teacher with IRCAM Department of Pedagogy. He is also an associate researcher at Sorbonne University and a composer. He has a scientific and musical background, and his research focused mainly on the theme of computer assisting music writing and musical formalization. He's going to present a paper on audio descriptors and music writing, a perfect transition after Daniel.
Thank you, Pierre. Good morning, everybody. In his Collège de France inaugural lesson, the French composer Philippe Manoury stated that the knowledge of sound has often exerted a decisive influence on the theories of composition, emphasizing that composition techniques depend, among other things, on the knowledge of the sound phenomenon. From this point of view, we will try to understand how this knowledge of sound, especially those brought by sound descriptors or audio features, have been integrated recently in the musical composition and what possible consequences. Some reverse. I don't know. Someone said something for me, but I don't know what exactly they said. Anyway, music composition and what possible consequences for the musical writing and for our conception of the musical timbre. Okay, let's continue. I just make really in 2 lines brief recapitulation of about sound descriptors or audio features. Okay, the nutshell in the way that I am seeing it, I am considering a sound descriptor or an audio feature as an uni or multidimensional parameter bringing a particular or specific or individual dimension of a given audio signal, reducing it to one or more digital parameters. It's obvious that its temporal evolution can be used to represent, characterize, illustrate a flow or the evolution of sound events, exactly how Daniel Massero did now. But if you consider, in fact, all the calculations and the variations, actually we can reach, I don't know, 200 or 300 low-level representations, okay? What is important to mention is that these descriptors or these features are very primary representation, physical measurements, very partial views on the sound, and not all of them are immediately relevant in a musical context. For some of them, it's obvious we can give some musical meaning. Fundamental frequency is related or encode a part of prosody. Amplitude variation is related with phrasing, for example. Spectral brightness, our kind of, I don't know, the star of the audio feature, it's always related with timbre perception for a long time. And for example, spectral spread, it's related with spectral density or sound volume or orchestral volume as told by Copeland. Okay, but the point is we cannot always give them a musical or a perceptive meaning. This is really, really very important. And I will come back to this point very, very soon. Okay, let's see now how about musical composition. While audio features have been known since the 70s and have begun to be massively used in composition since the early 2000s, composers did not wait for them to use acoustic and physical sound knowledge as element for composing. From François Bernard Mach in the 60s, with his phonographies through the so-called spectral school with Gérard Griset, who developed the idea of acoustic synthesis, by Trevor Wishart, Clarence Barlow with his idea of synstrumentation, Tristan Murail, Magnus Linder, Kaya Saviaho, Jonathan Harvey, Marcus Troppa, Claude Mahler, Joshua Fiedler, and many, many, many others, new generations, all this knowledge become a part of their composer toolbox relating or not with spectral aesthetics. There has been a great development of composing techniques for instrumental and electronic music based on the extraction of physical parameters from sound, adapting them to different aesthetics. But just let's come back a little bit because this is, let's see the context of all of this. In fact, it was in the late 90s, early 2000, that began the major projects of mere musical information retrieval, mainly driven by the growth of the music on digital media industry. At the time of the MP3 player, smartphones dematerialized music online, the problem is to be able to manage, navigate, and choose from thousands of songs, otherwise more. As a result, a considerable amount of research and development tools was dedicated. The access to conceptual and software tools allowed composers to develop their artistic and aesthetic research in composition techniques based on the use of features or sound descriptors, because at this moment they not only have had the knowledge, but also the tools to make experiences. Currently, we have a large number of composers that use audio descriptors in many stages of the composition process and in different aesthetic directions. Alas, they are not all there. But let's see some of the actual techniques that are applied in musical composition. This is what really interests us now. Without the necessary hindsight that we will have maybe in a dozen or even in 20 years, I would say that there are two great families of techniques using the sound descriptors or audio features in composition. I have grouped them in some categories, and you see that in some cases the borders are very narrow between them. Sometimes it's the composer intention that defines the category. Hence, the first family of techniques corresponds with what I call sonification mapping event detection score following. And the second one, techniques using the large database of sounds, where you find the clustering or classification, orchestration, mosaicing or mosaicing, transcription, gesture mapping, constraint on space, and so on. For the first category, okay, that is the sonification mapping detection score following, the underlying assumption of this family of techniques is that they consider the evolution of a descriptor as carrying information about the musical phenomenon focused. This information can be used for to translate then into a space other than that of synthesis or transformation in real time. It can also be done by mapping and sonification techniques. They are used also to build event detection functions, for example, like Daniel did in his talk. Okay, in this case, we can detect events or configuration by locally modeling certain aspects of the musical phenomenon by one or by a set of descriptors. And it's obvious to build a kind of model of the phenomenon. In general, I consider this family of techniques as a development of the work of tracking fundamental frequencies, amplitudes, set of parcels of roughness. Well, a set of techniques that is very well known in mixed music. Let us look to some examples and to listen something also. The first example that I am just mentioning because it's something very well known is the application, the use in the piece La Muette by Florence Bachet for voice, ensemble, and electronics, the use of a continuous IRCAM gesture follower that have used the MFCC and the amplitude tracking of the acoustic instruments. In fact, it's the very well-known score following process, but now following directly a representation of sound, or two representations, the MFCC and the amplitude tracking. As disease is very well known, I'm just not going to show something. Another use in the same way is for the piece Da una crepa by Marta Gentilucci. At this time, the composer used the second harmonic tristimulus to detect the rhythm of vowel tremolo. Okay, I hope that you listen it. This was done with the objective to control further in the piece a bank of harmonizer in the real time. Just as a reminder, the second tristimulus is the energy ratio of the sum of the second, third, and fourth harmonics on the global energy of the spectrum. Okay, just to give an example, this is the page 16, event 6, where the composer records the second tristimulus from the vowel tremolo in the background of the choir. Let's listen it. Oops, sorry. Not very easy to listen it, okay, and to detect, but you have in the background, you have the kind of yo from the choir. And this is used further in the piece where all the data, all the rhythm is applied to an harmonizer that works on a kind of steady state chord made by the choir. Oops, sorry. I am not sure that you are really correctly listening. It's not easy in real time here. I don't know, but you can listen a little bit, a kind of tremolo in the background. But this tremolo, in fact, is the electronic modulating the steady state or the static point. Another example is in the work The Dispersion of Trajectory for Sax and Electronics from José Miguel Fernández, where he used audio description in real time in two ways. The first one being the detection of thresholds, spectral deviation, and noise energy configuration to tweak process freezes in the electronic process. The second way is being the mapping of audio descriptors, the centroid, the spectral centroid, to control synthesis parameters. In fact, he maps the spectral centroid with frequencies of reading wavetables. We are going to listen a small extract, and we are going to see, especially the detection of the thresholds. It's very easy to listen. You have this kind of frozen sounds time from time. Let's listen to measure a 138 to 141, where the composer mixes all these techniques. Okay. Okay, considering now techniques using large database of sounds, the basic assumption underlying this set of techniques is that this is possible to represent a sound extract by a set of reference sound descriptors values, okay? This reference set of sound descriptors being considered as a sound sample identity card or fingerprint. For example, imagine the vector displayed here that will be linked to a sound sample and will represent it in the process. In fact, this vector is being a kind of ID of the sound itself. A first example is the sound data clustering applied to musical composition. And I would like to present briefly the research thesis work of Frédéric Lebel. One of its aims is to develop clustering methods applied to large set of sound, to classify them according with an audio feature reference set, in order to create a set of sounds that he could afterwards go through according to a given graph algorithm or just in his imagination. To give you an idea of his process, from a set of sounds, for example, here a set of 50 saxophone multiphonic samples, he analyzed them according to a set of audio features previously chosen. Then, are supposed to be similar sounds. Okay, each subset consists. It's supposed to be a set of similar sound according to the audio feature reference set he chooses. Subsequently, he will be able to go through these sets by controlling the musical evolution or stress. It can be done by an algorithm or just by ear. Let's give an example of one of the sequence he built from these multiphonic saxophone multiphonics. And here is the path that he built, where it's supposed to decrease the transition stress from one multiphonic to the other. If some of you have tried to concatenate multiphonics, you can know how it's hard, this task. And you can see here how he reached something very smooth. Now, concerning the techniques using large sound databases, we have also orchestration, mosaic controlled by sound descriptor, transcriptions, gesture mapping, and constraints on the descriptor analysis space. All of they are founded on the same basic principle or the same process. What is the following? Starting from a sound database, analyze it from a set of reference descriptors, and an identity card is created for each sound, building what we call an analysis database. Then, starting from a target sound, analyze it by segments, and with the same descriptor reference set, we will look for in our analysis database what sound or segment of sound of this database of analyzed sounds correspond to each segment of the target sound. And at the end, we will have a sound or a sequence of sounds or a configuration of sounds from our database corresponding to our target sound. Okay, I imagine that this is not easy at the first time. What I propose to you is to give an example of it, okay? Okay. Just to say that I have the authorization of the composer to do what I am going to do now. Considering an excerpt, for example, of Un Écho from Philippe Manœuvre as our database. Okay, we will segment and analyze it, and we build our small database base. This one you see with the numbers, where you have the analysis. On the other hand, we have the beginning of Jupiter, also from Philippe Manœuvre. That will be segmented and analyzed. Subsequently, we compare each analysis segment of Jupiter to find which segment of echo on echo matches it, thus building a sequence assembled from on-echo sounds, however, taking the analytical structure of Jupiter. And we have now a new Philippe Manoury works that is the echoes of Jupiter. Just to mention that no sound from the database was transposed or changed. And maybe a question that will arise, the feature used here was the chromagram. Concerning orchestration, the basic process is the same with some changes. The reference sound database is made up of orchestral sounds with all the different playing techniques. Here, the purpose is to be able to find in our orchestral sound database the sounds that mixed up will sound as the target sound proposed. For example, let's see here a scream. The orchestral engine succeeds in finding what configuration in a set of orchestral sound samples corresponds to it, and also the corresponding musical score. Let's see here just one result of this virtual orchestration. We have actually a lot of works and a lot of papers about it. I would like just to highlight the last work that is done actually by Carmen Micella, Orchidea. I put here the link. It's a very interesting set of tools that are really easy to put in practice. But let's continue with our presentation. The next technique is the mosaicing or musaicing. Under the name of mosaicing, or also musaicing for music, we find a set of techniques developed from computer strategies for the management of a large sound database that was developed by Dimo Schwartz and also Ziels and Pache. The point here is that these techniques consist especially in assembling the sounds at the final step, by concatenative synthesis of short sound samples from a database according with their similarity with the target sound. In fact, it's in the same way that we did until now. I would like to give an example of this technique. It's the second part of the work Poetry for a Dark Doll from Marco Antonio Soares. Here, the voice is captured and analyzed in real time to control the choice of samples prepared beforehand. Each performance will be different, the electronic creating aleatoric textures, but always consistent and coherent with the singer interpretation and voice color. Here was used especially the analysis of the real-time MFCC. It's obvious that just with one interpretation we can feel it, because we always have this feeling of something very organic, but it works very well. The next technique that I would like to show is the transcription considered from the point of view of audio features. In this context, I would like to present the work of Aaron Einbond. Aaron Einbond works with what we call corpus-based transcription, creative orchestration and transcription from a variety of reference sounds, a kind of transcription intended to take into account aspects of the sound phenomenon other than pitch, relying more on timbre aspects of sound. In his case, Einborn used audio descriptors as a set of timbre representations. A short example of his work, What the Blind See, for viola, clarinet, harp, prepared piano, percussion, electronic, will be a good example. Here, Einborn uses as target sounds recordings of natural sounds like rain, wind, snow, etc. For example, let's listen an extract that a sound from a glacier. It's very low. Oops. Okay, coming. Okay, as a first step of his workflow, he used a software called Qatar, where he created a mosaic, a kind of mock-up, transcribing the sound of the glacier by samples of instrumental sounds. Let's listen to the mock-up now. And finally, uses another software, OpenMusic, he transcribes this data for real instrument. Here is an acoustic interpretation with real people, real instrument of this extract. As Einborn writes, bridging techniques of musique concrète and musique concrète instrumental, my work since 2007 has focused on using timbral descriptions to transcribe audio recording for live instrumental ensemble and electronics. Another example that I would like is, I have just two last examples, is the work of Ben Akbar, composer, that works with the concept of gesture mapping, or gestural matching of sounds. It is mosaicing, but with the intention of keeping the color profile of the target sound, keeping the color gesture, generating non-identical objects, but with similarities in the evolution of sound, of some sound parameters. For his work, Ben Akbar developed a software that is called Audio Guide. Here is an example of his work, or Volleys of Light and Shadows, and the workflow he used. He began with a mock-up of voice sounds. From this, the composer created a gestural similar sequence using as a database sounds of percussion. And in the final work, the performance, these two strata are superimposed. Okay, Daniel was finished early. I am maybe finishing late. I hope not too much. As a last example, I would like to present the work of Daniele Ghisi from the point of view of symbolic constraint on the sound or timbral space. Here, instead of having a target and audio file, Daniele Ghisi uses a symbolic constraint in the analysis step. In his experiments with time installation, Daniele Ghisi used a database of musical samples from various eras, music from various eras. Ghisi, instead of giving an audio target, proposes to its computing environment the symbolic constraint C major. The result is the sequence called C history, corresponding to the month of June of experiments with time. Let's listen to it, please. Okay. Okay, what do these all examples show to us? If we came back, we can see that much of the 20th century Western music was dependent of a formalization of the sound space that was based on a tripod: pitch, frequency, intensity, and time. The timbre, from the point of view of composers, being formalized or understood from these same three parameters: harmonie, timbre, a classical French point of view. In Scheffer's treatise of musical objects, where there is an acute consciousness of sonorous morphology, everything will also be deduced from what Scheffer calls the reference triedron: time, frequency, and intensity. Musically, the timbre was manipulated from ad hoc taxonomies, such as the traditional classification of groups in the orchestra, or the varied distribution and arrangements that composers make, as for example the timbre classes in Aporypsis of Xenakis, where the composer organizes the timbre space in category timbre classes. The musical composition of timbre, in the proper sense, has also found its expression mainly in the orchestration through the exploration of playing techniques and through the digital sound. The well-known example are the Farben by Schoenberg, or the most recent, for example, Metal Extensions by Jan Maresch, where the composer transposes the timbre of the electroacoustic process from an early piece on a traditional orchestra. I'm just going to jump it because we don't have really much time to listen. However, let us not forget Gray, Wessel, and McAdams' experience, where the timbre begins to be described by an audio feature space. But it was not the case in musical creation at this time, where the concept of audio feature were not so much diffused. And also, don't forget that from a scientific point of view, the timbre is mainly done or mainly defined by exclusion. I hope that you are not stressed, Pierre. I'm just finishing, 2 minutes more. It's at the end. With the use of audio feature, other categories of representation, admittedly partial, however measurable, are proposed to composer, other than those of the reference triedron, amplitude and time. What impact on music composing? From a qualitative parameter, the timbre actually becomes a phenomenon with measurable dimensions. This allows creating scales, calculating proportions, distance, and calculating thresholds, allowing digital comparison. A first barrier was overcome. These new dimensions become parameters of writing, become parameters of musical composition, elements bearing form. They must be tamed, understood, learned by the composer. They become a measurable parameter for musical composition. Composer now had to develop a new solfeggio before they could integrate the audio features, sound descriptor in their music. They had to learn to relate them to phenomena and musical characteristics in order to be able to anticipate and combine them, to use them as a musical composition elements. And audio feature solfeggio is emerging. This new awareness of sound space proposes a parametric space of musical composition integrating new dimensions. Composers who wrote with pitches, intensity, duration, and timbres added to their toolkit roughness, perceptual weight, brightness, kurtosis, skewness, and a lot, and many other parameters that they are managing to connect to their inner aural perception. And this is very important. Because what seems interesting, and now is maybe the most important point, is that even if there are shared descriptions or shared audio features, each composer chooses the descriptors according to the sound quality that he or she wants to manipulate and or identify. Around Aimon, you write in a personal communication, but the point to emphasize is that I have always judged the choice of the scriptures in my ear as a part of subjective compositional choices. This is why I use a greater perceptual descriptors instead of scientific descriptors such as the MFCC. José Miguel Fernandez would tell me in a private communication, and he agreed with what I am writing, that he chooses his descriptors according to the sound qualities that he wants to identify and or manipulate. And he will add with humor, tell me which descriptor you use, and I tell you who are you. All these points led us to think that as Pierre Schaeffer, there is not a one timbre, but a multitude of timbres. Schaeffer spoke of the timbre as a series of objects and the timbre of a series of sounds. Perhaps the question to be asked now would no longer be about a unique space of timbre, but rather about spaces of timbres. That reminds me Schoenberg's last phrase about the timbre in his harmony treatise. In such domain, who dares ask for a theory? Considering audio features or sound descriptions are timbre dimensions, form, and information bearers, and by integrating them into their musical composition process, the composers of our time are operating an ad hoc exploration of the space. They are in a process of enriching the compositional music space in addition to proposing one or several timbre, pragmatic, and operative theories. In fact, no doubt, Schoenberg will be really stunned. Sorry to be late, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Mihail, with this very rich and very rich presentation. Maybe we have time for a small question.
Peut-être moi, j'aimerais bien poser une... I would like to. Thank you very much, Mikhail. I was wondering, so the matching algorithm that you showed us, I don't know, I know we cannot explain an algorithm like that, but I would love to know how or in which environment that algorithm takes place.
Is Max. I did this, Max. It's very easy. I can just show to you after. I am going to put the patch in the examples from the MIDI library very soon. And just, I take a sound, I use like you MIDI process, I make an analysis of chroma,